Alrighty then. My name's Boston. I'm an upholsterer. You probably figured that out from the name of the channel. And I figured today I'll show you how to make one of these. Just bog standard scatter cushion. You see them all over the place. But you might want to make one of your own. You might have some fabric, or you might have seen some fabric that you really like the look of, but can't find a cushion in it. And so, yeah, it's a few simple steps. And as long as you've got a sewing machine, you'll be fine. There is another tool I use called an overlocker tool machine. Both the same thing. If you don't have one, it's fine. It's not necessary. I just like to use it because it keeps things looking professional. But yeah, let's make it. Okay, so to start off, I've already got the fabric that I'm going to be using laid out. Just going to grab some tools that I'm going to use. I pulled the big ruler out. I didn't actually use it, but you know, it was there in case I did want to use it. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the first line I draw is going to be nice and square. I'm making a square cushion. We want it all to be square. I'm doing all of this in real time as well for this video. There's no time lapses or anything like that. So just to show you how quick and easy this really is. So what I'm doing here is just measuring out how wide I want the cushion to be. Those measurements will be exactly the same up and down as they are side to side because it's a square and squares are square. So just measure up there, draw a line. I'm using a pen. A lot of people use chalk. I find that with chalk, once it's on there, it's on there. You may as well just use a pen. Difference is chalk does tend to last a bit longer, but yeah, pens are fine. So now we can start cutting out this piece. Snippy, snippy, snippy. Snip, snip, snip. You don't have to use scissors here, you could use a rotary cutter if you have one. Something I've been meaning to get, just to speed things up a little bit. But scissors are fine. I mean, ones you've got in your kitchen drawer might not be great, but you can pick up some cheap dressmaking scissors from your local supermarket, quite cheap. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to mark the top so that when I'm sewing it together, I know exactly where everything goes. And then I could measure out the second piece, but because they're going to be exactly the same, I'm just going to lay this one on top of it, the way they're going to be sewn together, and just cut around it. And as long as you stick tight to the top piece, you'll be fine. You don't need to measure it more than once. But obviously you can if you want to. So just a little snippy snippy here, snippy snippy there. Watch your fingers, don't go through them. Try and avoid taking unnecessary shots of my back. Okay, so now that that's cut out, I can mark the top on that piece as well, so I know the orientation of everything. And then I flip it over, and then on the bottom, I'm going to measure. I measured in about 3 inches. This is a 20-inch cushion, so I needed quite a decent sized gap to slide the interior into later. You can make this any size that you find works for you. And then on those marks, I'm just going to snip a little notch so that I can see it later when I'm sewing. And that's it all cut out. Now over to the overlocker. If you don't have one of these, it's really not a big deal. I just like to do it to keep everything nice and tidy. Sometimes you can't use one, like if I was making a piped cushion, I can't fit all the piping and everything under the foot of the overlocker, so I tend to, if it needs overlocking, like if it frays really easily, then you overlock the individual pieces before sewing it on a piped cushion, but I'll go over that in another video at another time. So here I'm literally just overlocking the bottom edge of each piece, ready to start sewing. Zip that through there. Right, now over to the sewing machine. Thread on the bobbin, lift the needle up, get these lined up. We're going to start on that bottom edge that we notched out. And I'm going to just trim off the overlocking thread there. Find the notches, just make them a little bit more visible. As I was saying about scissors earlier as well, the scissors I use when I'm sewing are just a cheap supermarket pair of dressmaking scissors. Right, so we're going to get that lined up, put that under the foot, drop that down, drop your needle, and realise you haven't turned the sewing machine on. So then you start going backwards, go forwards, keep going, and then you stop at that notch, backwards, forwards, backwards again, forwards again, lift foot, slide that straight over. You don't need to worry about trimming it off just yet, just slide it over, down to the other notch, drop that down, put your needle down, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards again, forwards again, down, stop, back, and just to lock those stitches in, trim that off, and then you just trim the extra thread here. That's fine. Now the next job is we're going to put in the zip. Zip head, if I can find one, there it is, and then over to grab a reel, a spool, roll of zip. You can buy this in lengths. I just buy it by the roll because I use a lot of it. Measure out how much we need, trim that off, put that away. To put the zip head on, we open it up a bit, cut a little notch out of one side, and then slide the head onto the side we didn't just cut, and then line it up with the cut side and pull it down, and it's on there. Open up that seam, and where the opening is, we start the zip just past where those notches are. So we start sewing the zip on the seam and then run it through the opening. Do a little backwards, forwards, just to lock those stitches so nothing comes undone accidentally. And away we go. Just paying attention, keeping that zip on the edge of the fabric where we overlocked it, and just bit by bit, making sure you don't sew through your fingers. Just go until you get to the other end, and when you get there, just go past that notch by about ½ an inch or so, and then go backwards, lock that stitch in. If your sewing machine doesn't have a lock stitch feature, you can just lift the needle, the presser foot, and slide it forwards, and then go through it again. Slide forward, slide backwards, just slide it and sew it. And then do exactly the same on the other side. Realising here that my zip head is in the way, so I just reach in and slide it. Just finish off stitching this. And then finish that off with a lock. Lift your needle and just trim that off. Trim off any excess zip. And then we're going to open it up. And then we're going to flatten the seams so that they fold under their corresponding sides. So we're not accidentally sewing anything shut. And then we're just going to lock the ends where the zip finishes. The zip starts, or the end of the zip, and then keeping close to the zip but not too close that you're sewing over it. You can't really see it here. Fold that up. You're basically just going to run the edge of your presser foot along the edge of the zip and just sew that seam down. Adds strength, but also just looks nicer. Probably see this if you have a scatter or throw cushion in your house and look at the bottom where the zip is. They've probably done this. Up, drop it down. Now we do a little lock stitch on the end here, just to stop the end of the zip opening up by accident, losing your zip head. It happens all the time on cheap cushions, and it's really annoying. Drop that down, and just exactly the same on this side. Way there at this point. What we have to do now is just close this bad boy up. So, same again, always start with a lock, backwards and forwards, and keeping the sewing allowance of about 1/2 inch or about 1 centimetre. Through that. How many times have I said zip? I don't know. And then look back and forth, turn it around, line it up, drop it down. It's all very repetitive. Just make sure everything's nice and tight together, straight. If you're confident enough to pick up some speed here, by all means do. If you're not, don't, because no one wants a needle in their finger. And basically, at this point, the cushion is done. I just like to come back over to the overlocker, turn everything on, and then I'll just overlock those edges together. Just makes everything look nice and neat. As I said earlier, I've done all of this in real time, so the only real cuts in the video are just when I'm moving camera angles. Everything is the exact same speed, just to show you that it really doesn't take long to make one of these. I mean, you know, it's already finished. I'm just neatening up the edges. But something you can definitely do at home if you wanted to. Okay, so now that we've got our cover sewn up, I like to cut the corners off. Not too far, because you don't want to go through your sewing, but just enough so that when you turn it the right way out, you can really push those corners out and get them nice and square rather than them being rounded over because the fabric's all bunched up. And with the interior, I find it's always best to go a little bit bigger. Because if you get one that's exactly the same size as your cover, sometimes it can end up being a bit too baggy. But if you go bigger, fills it out. The way I fill them, you can do it any way you want, but I take my cover and I turn it the right way round. And then I'd really try and push those corners out. Obviously this is a lot easier with a cushion like this. If you've got one with a piped edge, it's not so easy to get the corners as square, but that's okay. Okay, and then what I do there is I find the seam on the cushion. There's generally a seam where it's been filled. I find that, flip it to face me so that it's at the bottom, and then I fold it in half, and then I start working it in there, which is sometimes easier said than done when you go bigger with the interior. You just work it in bit by bit. And then once you've got it in, I like to reach in and grab the corners, sort of push them into place. make sure that's all in. Gee, zip up. Give it a few love taps. And then just check it over. Make sure you haven't got any loose threads or anything. If you do overlock it, then you should get away with a few less, because I mean this fabric frays quite easily. But overlocking it, as I say, stops it fraying. And then yeah, that's it really. It's as simple as that. I'll if you like this one, I could do a video on piped cushions. But it's the same sort of thing. It's just a couple of extra steps. Yeah. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so that you can be updated with any new releases. Trying to put videos out as often as I can, and I'll see you on the next one.